already have a mare. We don't need any more big shots.
Yep.
Hello, hello. Hello, hello.
How's it going?
Pretty good, just wrestling with the technology per usual.
Nice. Me and John Ware going through moderating the other live chat.
Yeah? Is it getting wild?
Rapid fire.
It's not too bad, honestly.
Hey, Kapowski. We've been talking. How you doing, mate? Kapowski?
It should change to Kachowski so you can hit people with the kachow. Okay. Kachow.
Only the top tier intellectual content.
Nobody can recover from that.
Nobody.
The ultimate debate tactic.
Sorry about that. I was just doing something else for a moment.
Oh, hi. Cool.
Hey.
So, we're talking about cancel culture. And the reason we're doing that is because I wanted to talk about Joe Rogan, but then I realized that that was much too narrow of a topic to host a show on. So we're going to do cancel culture in general, its societal benefits or drawbacks, whether or not it's just accountability. And specifically, we're going to have a focus on Joe Rogan. I am hearing an echo right now.
Yeah, I'm trying to fix that. Hold on.
It might be my fault. That's the thing.
I think it might be just because I'm too loud here. Hold on.
It might be YouTube.
No, I'm not on the YouTube.
I should still... Hold on. Am I still streaming? Hold on. Sorry, 1 second. YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming. I don't really know how to fix that because I'm on the exact same Wi-Fi.
Not receiving enough video, is that what it said?
Yeah, it says it's not receiving enough video. Now, I'm on the exact same Wi-Fi I'm always on. So, like, I'm not really sure.
Okay, try it again.
I mean, I could end and restart theoretically. I mean, I don't really want to do that, but I could.
Just try it.
Your camera is off.
Yeah, your camera's off. It's not receiving any video to the camera.
Right. My Discord is
that's
not.
really
Yeah,
interesting.
My Discord camera isn't on, but that shouldn't affect the YouTube stream. Because it's a screen capture. Is what's being streamed, right?
Right.
That is a fun effect, Jack.
I want to know why it's catching the light like that.
Lens flare.
Is that all it is?
Yeah.
Lame.
It says stream quality is poor, but it seems to be fine. From what I can see, it's keeping up fine. Okay. I'm gonna leave it be because I'm on the same Wi-Fi I'm always on, so it should be fine. 1 second.
My guy, you're running a show? Well, they're running a show?
Yeah, well, they said that they would be done at 8, and they told me to start at 8, so I'm starting at 8. I don't know what to tell you.
Nice.
Plus,
That's
it's an invite
fire.
only. They're like really exclusive. Like it's just Trav and Andy, and then sometimes people they invite. So this one's for everybody. We don't need to hang out with the cool kids. It's okay. Anyway, we're talking about cancel culture, and we're talking about Rogan specifically because he's in hot water right now. A great deal of the internet came out to defend him, which is interesting. But a far greater deal of the internet came out to tell him that he's a horrible person. So we're talking about all that. And so there's a couple arguments I want to throw out there for everybody to respond to. And here's the idea that cancel culture is just another way of saying that people are being held accountable for their own actions. And that basically cancel culture is just a way of trying to duck responsibility for yourself. That's something I've heard a lot. Especially in cases like Rogan's where somebody said something that's actually a bit like egregious, like the N-word, and stuff on that kind of plane. So I was kind of curious what you guys thought about that. Jack, I would like to hear from you first because you were here first and you have a face cam, which means I love you.
It was so. How to put it exactly? The idea that it's just dodging responsibility is interesting because if the responsibility that we're talking about is social, like specifically. So we're talking about we're upholding Joe Rogan's social responsibility. Now the thing is I don't think that that's as important as like a lawful responsibility or anything like that because what's socially impactful now and will make people outraged may in 5 years not be as big of a deal. It may be looked back on as what should have been said or normal. And to have a massive social outrage and tear somebody's career apart based on mob justice is just a little silly. So I don't think that that's appropriate.
Okay, I don't. So then why not cross that bridge if you come to it? Why preemptively assume that we're going to cross that bridge?
Because I don't see it going anywhere but there. Like if it works out the way that if this works out the way that it's supposed to, people that are just accused of things can be completely taken off of prospects or destroyed without actually having any evidence of what they've done. You can socially damage somebody now with a blade that completely eviscerates them without them having to actually do anything. And even if that person comes out as they didn't do anything and they apologize, generally that person is cut in half socially either way, and they'll always have that stigma riding on the back of them. So saying that it's just dodging some sort of responsibility that they have is a little too soft of a way to go about it because there's a lot more that goes on with trying to do this than they're just saying.
Does anyone have any thoughts on that or any disagreements? If not, we'll move on, but I like to get a bit of banter going. All right, that's a hard pass. I think, John Boy, you were here a second. So I kind of want to pose the same question to you if you have any unique thoughts of your own on the issue. And if not, I can ask you a different question.
Yeah, I think I can address it broadly based on how you started it. And without going down the path of making specific definitions, I think cancel culture is somewhat of a conflated term. I think there are multiple elements to it, which probably need to be evaluated individually. I think at its most basic form, it's just an exercise where people are choosing what type of content they want to consume based on the messaging. I think that's not what we typically consider to be cancel culture, because there's something more pernicious that we observe when we watch the way that people respond to certain content, particularly on the internet platforms like Twitter. And that pernicious element seems to carry with it a certain moral lens with which it judges the content. And that's, I think, what's more interesting to evaluate. It obviously has significant costs for people whose companies of employment don't choose to support them, especially if, they're seemingly defensible based on PR reasons or, other business reasons. So in that sense, I think that's where cancel culture is problematic, because it doesn't seem to be, I'm describing it as this amorphous entity, but it doesn't seem to be very forgiving. I'm not sure that I agree with what I would describe as its, moral lens. Those are the issues I have with it, not at its more rudimentary form.
So you said something interesting there, that part of cancel culture is just people deciding what media they want to consume. But also, like you said, with the perniciousness, it kind of goes beyond that. It's not just people, voting with their dollar and voting with their time. It's like actively trying to force everybody else to vote the same way they do. So it's not like, I don't like Joe Rogan, I'm not going to listen to him. It's like, I don't like Joe Rogan, I'm not going to listen to him. Nobody else should either, and if you do, you are similarly evil. I think that's kind of a cut above, like you said.
I agree with that. This is kind of a scale in terms of where it becomes more, I think, problematic, especially if you're making that moral value judgment at the end there. But I don't personally have an issue with Neil Young coming out and saying that he doesn't want his music hosted on a platform that's associated with a particular point of view. I mean, that's his choice, right? Whether I agree with it or not.
I don't think anybody has a problem with Neil Young deciding that that's not what he wants it, like his platform to. I think the problem that people have with that situation is that when Neil Young said that, Spotify said okay.
Right.
I think that's the thing the problem they have. They don't have a problem with Neil Young going, I don't like the message that this place is going, and he's got all rights to leave, so he should. But in this case, I think people are more upset about Spotify just going, oh yeah, that's fine, Neil Young, Joe Rogan makes more than you, so you can leave.
Right, and I'm playing devil's advocate here a little bit. I'm not a fan of, I think, what the connotation is behind cancel culture. But even in that scenario, let's say people say, okay, fine, I'm not a fan of that, Spotify. I don't appreciate the decisions you're making, to govern the content on your platform. I'm not interested in being a customer anymore. I'll go find another company that more represents my values.
Sure.
If it's as simple as that, what's wrong with that? Even if you share it and say, hey, here's what I think.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to something like Walmart or Spotify, that's not going to matter. Right, but it's when it comes down, when you take that and you move it on to like a much smaller level, like somebody's like smaller website or like somebody's like brick and mortar store that they made. Like when it gets down to taking people out on a level like that, it's gonna matter. So it does depend on scale, like you were talking about.
Yeah, and I think there's a distinction there too, right? What is your intention? If we're evaluating something on this level.
Hold on, Jack, we're getting some echo from you. Yeah, okay. Just mute when you're not talking. All right, perfect. Keep going.
Is your intention to destroy someone's life? Is that how we're defining cancel culture? Yeah, I've got moral issues with that. So I think it's an important distinction, right? Because I think the two can sometimes be conflated, where people are just expressing genuine opinions about things that don't agree with them, and then there's kind of the more extreme version where people say, okay, now we're going to organize ourselves in a way that's going to target you specifically, try to make sure you don't have employment, make sure everybody knows your name, your face, because we disagree with you. I mean, I don't know if that's doxing, but there's kind of some other elements there. If that's how we're defining cancel culture, then I think it's completely toxic and it's dangerous.
Right. And I think definition of terms is always critically important, especially in today's world where often definitions are sacrificed for connotations. So it seems like we run into the problem now because Spotify's whole shtick is the fact that they have everything on one platform. Like that's kind of like their That's kind of like what they run on. And now, while they're losing little people, they can afford to do that. But if somebody big, like let's say Drake or like Taylor Swift or something, decides like it's Joe Rogan or me, Spotify's going to have a real problem on their hands. And this kind of leads to a larger trend of platform atomization. We can't have platforms that are for everybody anymore, apparently. It seems that more and more we're having platforms that are tailor-made to certain kinds of people. So like Gab or Parler is for right-wing people, and Twitter's for everybody, but it's pretty hostile towards right-wing people. And like maybe we don't know which way Spotify will go, but I could see a reality in which Spotify tends to just give in to what the mob wants, and Rogan has to go over to Rumble, which is like, you know, the right-wing YouTube. So it seems like we're getting this real divorce, and there's no such thing as neutral platforms anymore, which I kind of find concerning. It's just another manifestation of our polarization. Doolittle, I think you're here first. I'm kind of curious for your thoughts on this, and maybe on that, if you found what I said interesting.
On which one? On which one exactly?
Oh, I like to leave it open-ended. Just cancel culture in general, if you think it's good. Rogan specifically, if he deserves it. And if I said anything interesting, feel free to respond. If not, ignore me.
Yeah, so I think the centralization of information distribution is a societal problem. We don't have enough of a diversity of sources of information. Almost everything comes from 2 or 3 news outlets, whether it's like AP or Reuters or, I don't know what the one is on the right, but just there's not a real big diversity of information. There's a few people in big tech that control the distribution of almost all the information, aside from just the sources of it. And the cancel culture is not just people on the left saying they don't want to be associated with Spotify because Joe Rogan said nigger 67 times. It's the exercise of big tech executives over your free will, because you don't actually have as much influence as you think over your own opinion. It's really all about what are you allowed to be exposed to that forms your opinion. And the cancel culture is a power struggle for these people to maintain the maximum amount of power over everything that you do and say and think in your life.
Putting on the tinfoil hats here, but I can't say I disagree.
No, there's no. There's no tinfoil hat. This is not. It's not like they're canceling people that are not influential. They're specifically the people that are getting canceled are people that go against the mainstream narrative in a meaningful way.
You said something interesting, and it kind of raised a question. You said they. And I'm going to ask the question, who are they exactly? But the better question is, how do these canceling movements, like, they seem to organically... They seem to start organically, while even though like all their targets are very specific and somewhat systematic. So that's always been kind of interesting to me, how it's like, I don't know, like who's they, and how can such a organic and decentralized process of people just crying wolf somehow also be like so apparently organized and specific and targeted. I kind of wonder how that works. Anyone can pop into that if anyone has an answer. Lexicon, you haven't talked yet. I want to hear from you.
I don't got a ton to say on that.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they're all gripped by the same ideology, so they all do the same things. But Doolittle is right. I think that part of it is just you don't want anybody who is outside the approved narrative. But we also see cancel. But here's the thing: Joe Rogan actually did do something kind of bad to some people, and I'm kind of curious if you guys think that this was worth canceling over, even if canceling itself might not be something you support. Would this be a worthy cause? Because Rogan was canceled for saying the N-word, which is a not nice thing to say in regards to black people. But he did it when he was quoting a lyric. He was quoting a rap lyric, and he's been doing that for a while. I don't think it matters. Don't think it
His
matters?
context in every single case was him referencing the word
Yep.
in other people using it, or to describe why its use is negative.
Correct?
Then who cares?
Yeah, so that's true, and you guys just don't care if it's in that context.
If it exists inside of that context for me, it doesn't matter.
Kapowski, what do you think?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think that, anybody should be allowed to use that word as long as anybody of any race should be allowed to use that word as long as they're using it, as long as they're not using it as a slur.
Sure.
As long as they are using it in a context in which they are discussing that word, and there's no context in which people should be banned from a word leaving their lips at any time for any reason.
You're with Rogan. You're one of them radical right-wingers. We gotta throw you out. John Boy, I assume you agree, but I could be wrong.
I do. I definitely agree with that. I think we probably don't want to imbue like phonetics with some type of magical power as a society. But as a white person, I have no issue, especially as a public figure, voluntarily choosing not to use the word. I don't think I need to stand up for freedom of speech by saying it, even if it's in an innocent way. But yeah, I 100% support Joe in this case. I thought he honestly probably apologized for a little bit more than he needed to, but I understand where he's coming from.
Do you think he got canceled for what he said? Do you think he got canceled for saying the N-word, or do you think that was the attack that took him out and he was canceled for something else?
No, he got canceled for apologizing. That's why. These people never
No.
go after
No.
you if you stand.
No,
It was-
not at all.
I mean, partially.
That was the attack that took him out. That's not why he was attacked.
They
Was the-
go down the list. First they hit you for who you associate with. Then they directly call you racist. Then employers and how you get monetary value. This is not. If you don't apologize from the start, and your apology is, I said what I said. He never needed to get to the point where people put a supercut of him saying the N-word 67 times. It's because he backtracked. That's why, because they see weakness and then they attack. It encourages people to come after him.
No, but you're talking about tactics. You're talking about how he got taken out. I'm asking about why he got taken out. Why do you think he got taken out? I think that the episode that he got taken out for, which is actually fairly recent, and it's exactly when these attacks started happening, was 1768 Dr. Epstein. That's the episode
Epstein.
that I think that episode is the reason why he has been being taken out, in my opinion. I could be wrong.
I thought it started with Malone. That's the thing. When was Epstein?
Epstein was a couple days after Malone. They didn't actually start attacking him on the day of Malone.
Yeah, he was the
Generally-
pharmaceutical industry is,
I don't know why, but
Shit,
generally
man.
when they do go after Rogan, it's usually 3 or 4 days, because they've gone after him before in the past. It's usually 2 or 3 days after the podcast airs. I don't know why. It seems the people who are commonly engaged in cancel culture take a couple days to see Rogan's podcast.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, so I mean, if you said he was getting canceled for platforming a person that's an anti-vaxxer,
I mean,
I could believe that. I mean, I don't see a big societal reason for big tech to go after him just because he let a guy say that the vaccine is. I mean, especially right now with Omicron and the vaccine doesn't seem to be particularly useful for that variant anyway. So it's like, why would they wait until now? Because he's been doing this anti-vax stuff for 2 years.
I think it's that they see Rogan as an enemy because he'll allow people to speak what they have to say on his podcast, and he seems to have no scruples, particularly in who goes on his podcast. So because he's become the enemy, they're just looking for an excuse to cancel him. Malone was a good one. And then the reason they were able to take it to the racism and him saying the N-word has been happening since episode 240 when he's hanging out with the guy who thinks the earth is flat and aliens are real. They could have canceled him at any time. They don't really care. It's just, what could they get him on? And as soon as he apologized, he showed weakness, then they can do the next attack. Then they can take the next step. Then they can do the next thing. He got canceled because he gave in and apologized. That's why.
But he's not actually canceled, is he?
No.
Well, he did end up.
Joe
he did
Rogan
end up
is
removing-
uncancelable.
He also did end up removing like 117 episodes yesterday, and a bunch of them were political episodes, like episodes with Adam Kokesh, Michael Malice.
Yeah.
So he did a political purge on his episodes.
Do you think?
Wait, did he take him down or did Spotify
Both
take
he
him down?
and Spotify have said that he made the decision to remove those episodes. However, several people that were involved with those episodes had said privately Joe Rogan has claimed that he was told to remove them. And Adam Kokesh immediately after having his episode removed said, "Can I come back?" And there is a recording of Rogan responding with, and I quote, "I can't have you back on. Spotify wouldn't allow it."
Right. So if the compensation that Joe Rogan has to give, or this perceived slight, is removing pro-Republican political episodes, it's pretty obvious that it's not about Malone.
Yeah, and it's not just Republican either. Like, I mean, to be fair, Adam Kokesh is absolutely insane, and the dude needs to.
Do they take down Tulsi Gabbard?
Yes. So it's people who are ideologically against these groups.
Really? They took down that episode?
Oh yeah, Tulsi Gabbard is a right winger. Apparently, she leans right.
She's like Republicans would vote for her. Yeah, there's a lot of Republicans who would vote for her.
Well, I don't think that's because of her policies. I'm not gonna lie to you. No, okay. Somebody.
This is a level of censorship over that, but Joe Rogan is uncancelable. He's too popular. He has too big of an audience. He doesn't need Spotify. Spotify needs him. So he's not actually capable of being canceled.
He could leave and start his own platform, and he would he's not cancelable. He has a following of him as a person. So I think that's right. Which kind of puts Spotify between a rock and a hard place. But Rogan kind of acts like Spotify has leverage over him. Like, he's been apologizing. He's been taking down those episodes and, putting up with these restrictions. And I'm kind of curious as to why. Because you're right. They don't really have leverage.
I'm sure he likes the deal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm sure the deal's lucrative enough to where he'd want to try and defend it. I'm sure, he totally could just pop off and be like, I'm just going to go do my own thing, and I'm able to stand on my own two legs. But
Rumble offered him roughly the same deal by saying, over 4 years, if you give us a 4-year contract with Rumble, we'll pay you $25 million a year.
I just don't think that he politically aligns with Rumble enough to want to have that as his platform. And again, if he was going to do something along those lines that we were talking about just now, he would just go and make his own platform. But he obviously, in the case of that, has a really nice deal with Spotify, or likes what is going on there, and that's why he's staying.
Yeah, seems like it.
Hey, you might have a pretty onerous cancellation clause, termination for convenience.
Well, I mean, the thing is,
it's being pretty ugly.
Well, it's like we were saying, Kapowski was saying, Spotify needs him. So if he drops out, and if he's just I'm going to go stand on an island alone, that doesn't do anything good for Spotify. So they also, they want to keep him, but obviously they've got their own restrictions they're keeping to, and obviously just Joe wants to play ball. He likes, I don't know how to.
Yeah, he's just kind of inherently an empathetic guy. He does he's not a completely political animal. He's weird. I don't think he really wants to get into a firefight with the mob. I think he just wants to apologize and have his show. He's like, let me grill, God damn it.
I might be alone with this, but I kind of feel like the podcast for him is kind of like the guy who retires doing a hobby that takes work. And he just doesn't want to put in the extra effort of fighting things politically. This is his away time. Just leave him the fuck alone.
I think that might be right. I think that's partially true. Doolittle, you said something kind of interesting. I just want to circle back to it. You said that big tech is going after him specifically. Like, what did you mean by that? Because,
Yeah.
I mean, I agree that
Yeah,
big
they're
tech is
specifically going
often the instrument of, like, the cancel culture mob, and they're often bent to it. But you seem to think, like, they are the active agent who are going for this. What makes you think that? Or what did you mean, I guess?
I mean by that, I think that the people that are controlling, I mean, this is the conspiratorial side. Okay, the people that are controlling the narrative, which is, when I say big tech, it's the media, the mainstream media, and Google, and the other, YouTube, Twitter. Like if those guys don't highlight and turn the CNN, or I'm sorry, what's that? What was the hit piece with the compilation of him saying nigger? If they don't turn that into something viral, and they do, like the way that those things go viral is that a person who wants it to, somewhere in Google, that's an engineer, makes that video come up. When you search for Joe Rogan, that video comes up.
Right, the algorithm.
Right. It doesn't. If they shadow ban that video, then it doesn't exist. And if they put it on the top of the search, then it exists in the public consciousness. And things don't go viral on accident. That doesn't happen. There's no such thing as accidentally things going viral. And so the fact that there's 1,000 people that are complaining about whatever the antivirus one, but that did not actually bring things to a head. What brought things to a head was a hit piece made by a political super PAC.
I just kind of want to back up what he's saying right here. I just did a quick Google and just put in the words Joe Rogan. The first response was like, you know how Google suggests things you might be searching for?
Yeah.
Why did Spotify remove Joe Rogan? And it has this little blurb. 70 Joe Rogan podcast episodes were removed from Spotify amid a racial slur controversy. Some 70 episodes of Joe Rogan podcast were removed from Spotify as musicians protest the streaming service to allow the controversial podcaster to amplify falsehoods about the coronavirus and object to his use of a racial slur. At no point does it mention that Joe Rogan claims he removed the videos himself.
I mean, my point is that Google obviously is what, like, almost everything that almost everybody searches for goes through Google. And if they show you negative things, then you see negative things. And if they show you positive things, then you see positive things. So it's not coincidental that the Dr. Epstein video came on Joe Rogan right when he started getting attacked by Google. It's not. There's no way that's a coincidence.
Even though it is just relatively big news on its own, you think it's not how it works?
What's big news?
Yeah, well, Rogan's a really big public figure, and he's having on people with excessively controversial opinions. Like, is that not big enough news to make itself viral on its own?
Malone's been on tons of podcasts and stuff like that. Brad Weinstein didn't get canceled for having him on. Did they cancel Weinstein for having him on?
It is true.
I mean, like, how many people have had anti-vaxxers on their show? Like, there's one every freaking 15 minutes.
Big enough to be canceled. Weinstein's not big enough to be canceled.
That's fair. Weinstein's
okay.
not that big.
Yeah, okay. But he's also on the right. But the thing that triggered, like, there has to be a time relationship between the thing that triggers the canceling and the canceling. So it's not the fact that Joe Rogan said the N-word. And it's not the first time. There's no time correlation between Joe Rogan alternative coronavirus therapies and not trusting vaccines and things like that. There's no time correlation between those events occurring, which has been happening continuously for the last 2 years, and suddenly getting canceled. It's not that. It happened right after Epstein went on.
Well, that's certainly true, and that kind of ties back into a question we were asking at the beginning: is why did he get canceled? And Doolittle, I'm kind of on your side here. I don't really think it's because of anything he actually did, because he did all that stuff. Like the N-word stuff was like years ago, and he hasn't done it in years. I do think it's more just like he's a political dissident. He's kind of unorthodox, and he has a really big following, and he influences a lot of people. So the people who want to control the meta narrative decided that he's inconvenient and tried to discredit him and get rid of him. And Malone.
Did you watch the Dr. Epstein video?
I saw like part of it. I watched through the whole Malone video, but I only watched half the Epstein video.
Okay.
What about it?
Well, that's a lot more of a reason for Google to put him on a hit list than the Malone video is.
Sure, I just think that that's like a convenient excuse for something they wanted to do anyway. Like they just kind of waited.
You can't put someone on a hit list for the thing that you want to hide.
What do you mean?
Because they put him on. If they tried to cancel him for the video that they were actually canceling him for, they would be drawing attention to it.
Oh, maybe.
That actually makes too much sense.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much I like that. My tinfoil hat is like engulfing my skull here. Like, because
What do you think specifically about the Epstein video rather than just an accumulation of the things he's been saying about COVID, he's been getting criticized for months now. Not to mention the recent episode, just other controversial things here and there too, like the episode with Jordan Peterson about climate change that happened. It all happened at the same time too, with it's kind of like a cascading thing in terms of it hitting like a plateau of criticism.
People have been coming on his show with controversial climate change included for years now. No,
but
there's
he's been hit really hard with
correlation.
COVID.
There has to be correlation for causation.
This has been building up this year with this whole COVID thing. Wouldn't you agree that he's been getting more negative press now than he ever did before?
Right. I'm saying, I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm saying there has to be correlation for there to be causation. People say correlation does not equal causation, but there's no such thing as causation without correlation. And Joe Rogan's been saying controversial things. He's been anti-vax for years. He's been having anti-climate change people on his podcast for years. He's had Jordan Peterson on there saying all kinds of things about the patriarchy or whatever for years. He's had.
I've watched most of Joe Rogan's podcasts. He's not particularly anti-vax in the way that might be taken as you're saying it.
What do you mean?
Yeah,
right. So, what I'm saying is that these things have been building up for years, and there's been no attack on it for it.
Yeah,
but it's ramped up considerably. He's never gotten more press than he did this year, as he did when he had guests on, like Robert Malone and others who talked about COVID and said things that the media called.
Yeah, I'm just pointing out that the timing. Correlates with the Epstein video, not with any particular controversial vaccine video or him saying why didn't they cancel him any of those times that he said the N-word?
Because maybe it wasn't Rogan's variables changing, maybe it was their variables changing, and it's only now that they felt
it's because they don't care about it.
Can I ask you, what was the controversy around the Epstein episode?
That's Dr. Epstein talking about the research that he's doing on how Google can change election results by reprioritizing search results. And when you go and search and you start typing something, what comes up is personalized for you.
Yeah.
And the algorithms are very much capable of swinging public opinion polls like 30, 40, 60% on any given topic.
Yeah, he was very confident about that too.
And he said some really pretty freaking brutal stuff that could bury these big tech companies.
I feel like they would have just killed the guy.
This?
I feel like at that point they would, if it was if what he's saying was that accurate, they would have just killed the guy. It is not hard to make people
Well,
disappear.
Whoa.
He did accuse them of killing his wife
Wait, what?
Okay.
in the podcast.
Epstein
But
did?
did he get any backlash for this at all? I mean, for this episode?
Right, yeah, that's what I'm saying. The backlash started for the backlash started on that episode. But they're not gonna come out and Google is not gonna come out and make documentation of all the things that were bad about that episode that we don't want you to, because then people are gonna watch it. You have to make people not watch that.
Yeah. Admitting that the episode is bad is admitting what he's saying has value.
Even talking about it at all is free press for that episode.
This video specifically, you're saying a media backlash?
Yeah, it happened like pretty much exactly because I've been on the road listening to all the news for the last 2 weeks and stuff. So, it happened like right after the cancel thing. I mean, now the people were complaining about Malone for a couple of days, but the cancel thing, people pulling off of Spotify, and then the hit piece with the compilation video, that all came out like right after Epstein.
But not, yeah. Epstein's always causing trouble.
I know, there's too many people named Epstein that are just like...
Yeah, I guess.
By the way,
the simulations...
Epstein 2, Electric Boogaloo, did not kill himself.
We'll see.
I mean, it's a little bit conspiratorial, but I mean, I don't know. Like, why would you cancel somebody for having a guest that has a weird opinion about vaccines? That I mean, it so easily gets debunked. Like in
because
45
it's
seconds.
harmful, Doolittle. Because it kills people.
It's not harmful at this people. It's not harmful at this point. Almost everybody's already been vaccinated. That's gonna get vaccinated.
I mean, it does fit the narrative of other people that have been canceled off certain platforms for for that information. I mean, before Malone went on, he was just kicked off Twitter. So, there's a story there. We'll speculate on the implications, but
Yeah.
it doesn't seem unreasonable.
Yeah, Malone. Yeah, that's true. Maybe just kind of following him around.
I mean, but there's no power for anyone to gain. There's no money for anyone to gain by Malone getting canceled.
I mean,
Correct.
So I don't see how that's a plausible cause of Joe Rogan getting canceled.
I think it's a good reason to listen.
It's a fake because.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, but
totally.
that honestly kind of furthers your speculation, right? You just make it look like it's because Malone
Right.
was just on, but
And-
you have a different motive. But I mean, again, we're assuming a lot of things here from a conspiratorial standpoint that,
well,
of course, we unfortunately have evidence for.
I mean, we're not too far off.
I think there's evidence that CNN hates Joe Rogan just based on the constant lambasting he's gotten for the last 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, Brian Stelter is
but
really upset.
it's an additional step to get to. Okay, now there's an active plan where someone is intentionally, kind of doing what you're describing. And I'm not saying it's not possible. Technically, of course, it's completely feasible. But how do you know?
All right, keep your secrets.
Yeah, well, I don't know how you would know. It's one of those things that's not false. Okay, there's things that are not falsifiable.
Yeah, right. Well, you mean
And you
a
can
whistleblower or a
reasonably-
leak or something,
You could I mean, a whistleblower couldn't falsify that there was a plot to cover up whatever you think the reason,
Yeah, I know
the
you're
reason
going.
is.
Yeah.
Bojangles, we are talking about cancel culture, specifically Joe Rogan. Right now, we're kind of arguing over what exactly got him canceled and the difference between what actually got him canceled and what they say it is. So if you want to chime in about this whole situation, I'd love to get your hot take, mate.
I don't know if I have too many hot takes on this one. I just kind of hopped in to listen. I'm not really not a big Joe Rogan advocate. I've only watched a couple of his shows, so I'm pretty unfamiliar with.
So should he be kicked
his
off?
body of work for the most part. Oh no, absolutely not. would definitely say that his word should not have any effect on whether he's allowed to have his show be aired, or as to whether his old show should be deleted or not. I think that's pretty fucking retarded. Oh, we're live. Whoops.
No, it's all right.
My bad.
No, you're responsible for your words. It doesn't matter to me.
Fair enough. Yeah, I don't know. I don't see it as a very conducive way to have no words that will get your show snatched out of public discourse, or your opinion taken away and removed from the public as well. It doesn't really seem like a good way to conduct discourse over the long term.
Right. So long-term effects is another interesting topic. Is like, what do you think this is going to do long term? Because it seems to me that like you have the mob and who tries to cancel people, and then you have everybody else, and apparently everything is getting ripped between those things. Like we were talking about, like platforms basically have to decide what they want to do. Even companies and businesses have to decide whether they want a sloganeer or not. So I'm kind of curious for what you guys think like the end of this will be if it keeps on going.
Is there an end of this?
It's just
it ends when Joe Biden gets reelected president.
As a corp? Oh, you think so?
Yeah.
You think cancel culture will disappear if Joe Biden gets reelected?
It's all political. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I don't know about that, because then there's always the next election.
The mob,
because then there's always the next election.
Weaponizing
political.
Say again, Bo?
No, go ahead and say it.
Yeah, I was going to say, weaponizing the mob to shut down opinions you don't like seems at least partly political, if not mostly so to me.
Yeah, it doesn't really seem
that's
like
entirely it's entirely what political means.
I mean, like, obviously it's for political purposes, but I don't think the political incentive to, like, get rid of people or, like, culturally and socially discredit people will ever go away. I think that incentive will always be around.
Oh yeah, well now they're just they're just getting a more effective means to shut up political opinions they don't like. Now the internet allows you to remove people at will, and since the internet's kind of the forum we communicate with now rather than actually in person, it's pretty easy to shut people out, shut opinions out that you don't want to hear, or you don't want other people hearing.
So what should be done about that? Do you think that it needs to be a purely cultural revolution against this stuff, or do you think the government might have a role in protecting speech in this way? Which is kind of a fun tangent of, if we want to get rid of cancel culture, how do you think would be the ideal way of going about it? And we got some new people, so let's jump over to Doubt Sue. I think you heard that question. I'd love to get your thoughts on that. Deltsu, okay.
I actually wasn't listening.
My heart is broken. I don't know what to say. Okay. John,
so
you want
I'll
to
go
crack at
into
it?
something I was talking about earlier with Mrs. Howsky. Is it
Kapowski.
Mrs. Powsky or just Miss Powsky?
It's Kapowski.
I think that censorship is going to happen. Censorship is going to happen. It's inevitable, but you can pick where the censorship happens and who's allowed to do it. So
right.
Ideally, censorship would be done by individuals, and the locus of control would be internal on censorship. So, a consenting adult choosing what they want to pay attention to and what they want to ignore.
Do you think modern cancel culture qualifies as that?
And no, I think that the second best thing would be keeping the locus of control as local to the individual as practical, which almost necessarily requires any censorship to happen on like a near community, whether geographically near or politically near in the internet sense. It's going to require some kind of distributed authority over censorship, and and the authority should be as close to the individual as possible, as opposed to being dictated by a higher authority.
All right.
So if you don't like Joe Rogan, don't watch him. And if you don't want Joe Rogan in your community, don't subscribe to Spotify. But Spotify is pretty much a monopoly on music streaming or music and podcast streaming. It's not distributed. One person on Spotify could say, "Well, I don't want Joe Rogan," and Joe Rogan vanishes. Right, and maybe not Joe Rogan because he's too big, but almost anybody. Right. It would take one or two or three people that are very far from you to decide that you don't get to see this.
But I guess my question is...
that's wrong.
Well, I guess my question is, how do we get away from that? How do we get to the area that you would want to be in? Like, again, do people just have to decide?
Yeah, just distributed. Just a distributed locus of control over the censorship, and as distributed as possible and as close to the individual as possible. So you could have torrent streaming is the predominant method of transmission of this information.
The thing people on Tim Pool are always reading about the blockchain something buzzword. Everyone's interconnected and everyone has their own personalized website.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, and you could even do it at the state level, which would be better than we have one national internet that Google runs everything. Like we could say, if you had to have a government regulation, you could say that internet search engines can't operate in more than one state at a time.
I want to ask around to some people we haven't heard from yet. Symmetry, we're talking about cancel culture, specifically Joe Rogan. I'd like to get your takes on what you think about that and how you think we can fix it if you don't like cancel culture. If you do, then please give us the argument.
I'm pretty indifferent on the idea of cancel culture. I think it's just a trend and an ideology that is pervading society right now, socio-politically. But I'm sad to say I don't really have too much to say on it. When people go crazy and act as if they need to cancel something, it's just another way of taking offense. And why would you take offense at it?
What? I'm sorry. Say again. You cut out for me.
I'm sorry. I was just saying it's just cancel culture is another way to take offense, And I think people are just entertained by taking offense.
Yeah, I think that might be right. Do you know how we get out of that? In terms of...
a lot more education on philosophy and a lot more on psychology.
All right. Bombay, we are talking about Joe Rogan and his recent attempted cancellation. I'd love to get your take on whether you think this is good or bad, whether cancel culture in general is good or bad, and if you were like God King of the earth, what you would do about it.
I don't have a problem with cancel culture. Cancel culture is a good old-fashioned American politics. It's been around since the 40s, but they didn't call it cancel culture back in the 40s. They called it McCarthyism and House of Un-American Activities. But right. In regards to Joe Rogan, he had the freedom to say what he did and allow that guy to spout off all that stuff about COVID. And people had the right to respond the way they did. So they decided to pull their music off the platform of Spotify. And money counts, especially in America. So they said, we don't want to lose this money. So you're going to have to apologize. And we're going to get rid of 136 of your episodes. I think that's fair. He can say what he wants and people respond. So I don't see the problem.
So I guess my question to you is, you spoke in terms of rights. Like, they have a right to do these things. And I think I agree, but do you think it's good that they're exercising their rights in this way? Do you think it's healthy for society? Do you think it's, beneficial, or generates well-being, I guess, to put it in another way?
Well, yeah, I like what they did. What Neil Young and Joni Mitchell did, they just pulled their music. What else were they going to do? Stand outside his house and protest and smash the windows? No, they said, right, you guys want to let him say his stuff? Fine, we'll just take our music off your platform. I don't see anything wrong with that.
I do
think it
suppose
was
it's
good.
better than harassing him. So I do agree with that. Do we have any people who disagree? I know we do. I'm just curious if anyone wants to respond. Okay, or Mace, I'd love to get your take on the situation. Going once, going twice. Sold, but not to you. Okay, so I'll
Dead
just
quiet.
yeah, swing and a miss. Unfortunately, poor Mace. Anyway, how about Zemo? How about you, mate?
Hello.
Hello. Good to hear from you.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Bombay on as far as, I think it's, we have had cancel culture, quote unquote, around for a long time, McCarthyism, etc. Right? As far as Neil Young and the other artists, sure they can protest. I mean, they have a right to. But as far as the media portraying Joe Rogan as this unrehabilitatable monster of just crazy neoconservative politics, spreading misinformation at every leap and bound is just ridiculous. First, he's not a news source, and anybody that treats him as a news source is stupid, right? Two, now he does have on experts, and he has experts from all fields, including like people that spout misinformation, disinformation, whatever, which I find the misinformation and the disinformation a moving goalpost that can be used to censor a lot of people. So, for example, 9/11 truthers. Should people, and now there's an actual free speech problem because we have Jen Psaki, the White House press secretary, talking to big tech and saying, this is dangerous, blah, blah, blah. It's the same thing as the George Bush administration going after 9/11 truthers, right? The only reason they're raising this controversy is because he's more popular than the legacy media. The legacy media is dying, right? And he, quite frankly, is competition. He's competition. And they're going to use their perceived authority at any chance they can to, mischaracterize him or hold his feet to the fire for something, that is contentious. But yeah, I mean, some things he said are quote unquote, potentially dangerous, but I mean, so is everything else that everyone says, I mean, good Lord. And as far as the cancel culture thing being equivalent to McCarthyism, I would argue there's something a lot different about this version of cancel culture, right? That was strictly reserved around one topic, communism and the threat of spies, and it was relatively contained to the government. This is something that's happening on a civilizational scale. This is happening, in colleges, to pretty much everyone that doesn't espouse the proper orthodoxy. And I would just cite John Stuart Mills, and I'll be done with it. John Stuart Mills says, when you censor someone, right? Like say someone comes on here and says evolution isn't real, and you just say, oh, well, you haven't read enough, go and read some books. You actually owe it to yourself to hear their argument, right? Because if you go 10 years without engaging someone on, say, climate change denying or evolution, you then begin to not even realize why you believe what you believe, because you're never challenged with the alternative viewpoint, right? And there's the other quote where if you rip out a man's tongue, it tells the world you fear what they have to say. So, I just see it as all this cancel culture type stuff as a reinforcement of, a form of PC authoritarianism. And yes, there's consequences for things people say, but I would submit there's something different about this day and age's cancel culture. And that's all I got.
That was a rousing monologue from Zemo there. Everybody's poetry snaps.
I liked it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with most of it. Honestly, I I kind of want to get everyone else's opinion because I really don't care about what I have to say. I kind of want to hear from you guys. Andy, you haven't talked, so do you have anything in response to that, or just the topic in general? Please go off.
Yes, I would like to say that I think it's wrong that people should be deplatformed for potentially controversial expressions of what they believe. Whether or not that is truly what is happening commonly, or if it's just people sort of limp-wristedly scolding people for disagreeing with them. I think it is preferable that we have a conversation about what we disagree with instead of trying to push it to the side and create this idea like everyone is in agreement about what is acceptable and what's not.
Sure. I mean, like, this is kind of a question I've asked a couple times. I'm kind of wondering if we'll get an answer. It might just be an impossible question. Doolittle made a valiant attempt that I thought was interesting, but I'd like to hear it from everybody else. Is how, like, basically, if this trend of cancel culture of like destroying people's lives and livelihoods because you don't like them or what they have to say, if this continues, where do we end up in the end? And how would we change course? I think those are like the most important questions, because we can complain and say this is stupid and blah, blah, blah. But I kind of I personally would like to hear some like solutions. So I'm kind of curious if you guys, if your guys' collective brain power has generated any ideas for like how that would work. Maybe Zemo mentioned the point about how like this could be a free speech issue because the White House tends to be encouraging some of these behaviors, which I think is interesting. So I'm kind of curious if anybody has any ideas on how to fix it, or maybe wants to spread some doom and gloom about what will happen if we don't. Sir Grimm, you've been here for a while. What do you think, man? Easy questions, I know.
I think that it's already being fixed. We all have this issue about, how we're offended, but I think it's on a higher level. If you actually look at the internet of connections, right, and getting people out of their echo chambers and all these interesting psychological effects that everybody's listening to, like, what is the Dunning-Kruger effect? What is an echo chamber? And what are these things? Well, it's because you're connecting to the internet every day, and people went from like 20% of their life having access to the internet and doing things now to a rapid 80%. In fact, majority in the past 2 years. So what does this truly mean? Well, what this means is that we're all getting comfortable with each other. So as we're actually noticing like landscapes kind of change and things break and, this person said a thing and what does that really mean? It's actually healthy pain. And I know it looks bad and I know it looks terrible, but it's really, really healthy pain. Did previous generations talk about this stuff? Fuck no. In fact, it became so problematic, right, that you had like just massive confrontations, conflictions, and like these like nuclear families like just blowing up overnight. And now you actually have children like willing to talk about hard subjects at like age 16. And so I think as more and more of this comes out, you're actually seeing this change in landscape when it comes to good psychological understanding of what the narrative needs to be, how good, healthy human psychology comes about, what respect and dignity and integrity really means. So we're going to notice kind of healthy pain is what my opinion is, and we're going to notice these things start to kind of go away, which we already are. You're noticing some wins in some really interesting areas, which you would normally be like, yeah, but why is that person not canceled? Well, because we're actually looking at context now at a different scale. That's my answer, if that helps.
You think cancel culture looks at context?
I think cancel culture is getting its hands slapped because the context is starting to catch up. When you have cancel culture, I think has a progressive mindset. When you have a progressive mindset, you become so rigid in your goals and your focus that there is no room for opposing views. And so that actually starts to lose followers very drastically. And some people start to look at those things. That's why you see some of the progressive things that pop out only last for a few years. But yet, democratically, like if you put progressive Democrats, like they'll last for like 20, 30, 40, 50 years, right? Well, it's because it's not the progressive mindset. It's It's allowing other individuals to speak, allowing this kind of war of ideas, as Pangburn might say, happen. And you're seeing that now full front in the screen, seeing what's happening. Rosie O'Donnell canceled, right? She's off The View or whatever. Nobody gave a shit about Rosie O'Donnell in the first place. And if somebody should have said that, she should have been canceled in the first place.
Whoopi
It probably
Goldberg
wasn't
was
even what she
canceled
said.
too, which is interesting.
Okay.
Like, not really. She'll come back, but that's kind of fun.
She'll come back in some other form, but behind the scenes, like the way a company is act, like The View is a company. They're a business ready to make money, trying to grab attention. So canceling Rosie O'Donnell because something she said is one out of many reasons why they did it.
You mean Whoopi? You mean Whoopi?
Goldberg, sorry. I wish I was
Yeah, I mean, I'll piggyback off of Grimm's point because initially, when you asked the question, I was going to say there is no solving this. The people that are kind of entrenched in this mindset are kind of too far gone to be reached. But I reconsider my point with the concept of its growing pains, especially because we're more interconnected and so forth, right? So I think a big thing that we're seeing in real time is, one of Fox News's headlines about the Whoopi Goldberg thing was cancel culture came for the cancelers. And it's the same concept with free speech. Like, the reason I don't think hate speech laws makes much sense is because if you're imposing any right on freedom of speech, it can be the next year, the next decade, that same law could be used to be imposed on your free speech, depending on who's in power. So the same thing, the same concept is happening now, right? People are coming for people who agree with them on other subjects, and now you're going to see that community maybe second guess it and say, hold on, something's wrong about this, and then maybe course correct. And so growing pains, I think that's a good point, Grim.
Yeah, getting comfortable with each other. That was a good point.
Yeah.
So we got some new faces in here now. Big crowd. Some of our more infamous channel members. So I want to drop the questions to them. So Lebowski, Delsu, Dan, I'm primarily looking at you. If you hadn't heard, we are talking about cancel culture, specifically about Joe Rogan and his whole deal, but cancel culture on the whole. And the most recent topic that I tried to pose is basically, if we keep continuing on this path of cancellations as it is, where do you think we'll end up? And if you think we should fix it, how exactly would we do that? So that's kind of the question. I'm kind of looking at the pragmatic side of things. But feel free to respond to the prompt of cancel culture however you want. Lebowski, I think you were here. Dalsu was here first, but you already had a turn. So Lebowski, please give me your takes here, man.
I guess to me, it would really depend on what's actually meant by cancel culture, right? So a lot of times in the discussions that are being had, it usually comes down to people saying, hey, we don't like what this person said, and they put pressure on the company to make that decision. It's not like those people are actually the ones making the decision to cancel something. It's where if you look at in Oklahoma, the law that anybody from across the country can sue libraries for $10,000 a pop to remove books from libraries. And that is a direct function of government allowing that to happen, which I think is a way bigger issue than if we're talking about, people getting mad at Whoopi Goldberg or Joe Rogan and being like, hey, I'm going to cancel my service or something like that, or I'm going to not watch that show anymore. So I don't really see that necessarily as cancel culture. That's just more just in the same way Joe Rogan can state his opinion, other people can state their opinions as well,
Is it like protest?
Pretty much. I mean, that seems like it's probably closer to the idea of protesting something than out canceling something, because to cancel somebody.
Didn't we have a president? Didn't we just have a president that said way weirder shit than that?
It's true.
I think I remember we did.
Law markers.
He said it was a climate change was a conspiracy by the Chinese.
But also, the president that we had that said weird shit got canceled.
So
yeah. Meanwhile, Bush.
In case you didn't notice. Meanwhile, he got canceled.
Yeah, but that's a thing. Like that's a thing. I guess like how we're using this term, because if we're saying somebody lost an election, they got canceled. I mean, to me, it seems like.
While he was still president, he had his Twitter account suspended.
Well, I actually think there's a good argument for that.
Yeah,
I mean, I actually think there's a great argument for censoring Trump. I mean, if I did
There's always a great
1,000
argument for censoring your political
No,
opponents.
no. I'm saying for censoring someone off of Twitter, because it's quite clear. I mean, just put it this way: he offered credible threats of nuclear war to North Korea. Do you think that might violate the terms of agreements with Twitter? Do you just think maybe that might have something to do with why he got kicked off?
I kind of doubt they have that specific
No, you don't have an because, like I said earlier, causation always comes with correlation, and he didn't get canceled.
Yeah.
When he was trading threats with Kim Jong-un, he didn't get canceled. He got canceled other times for saying other things. So no, that was not the cause of him getting canceled.
But then here's a weird one too. How many games has Colin Kaepernick played since Trump, that son of a bitch, off the field, right? So I mean, was that Trump canceling Colin Kaepernick because he's
what's to
he
that?
got blackballed out of
So to that, right? Because we're mainly what we're talking about isn't anybody on the street saying some weird shit, because nobody cares about the homeless guy who's clearly racist on the corner, and nobody cares about that guy who spouts bigotry and hate. They just say he's crazy, right? And maybe he's right, maybe he's wrong. I don't know. It depends on what he's yelling about. But it's only profiled people. So now you have people in this say like, okay, well, I'm a public figure, right? So now you have to watch what you say, okay? And when you watch what you say, your integrity starts out the window, I think, unless you really focus on what you're trying to say, right? Maybe you're childish at heart, and when you stand up to the podium and you actually want to say, here's who I am, believe in me, you should probably come up with your own speeches and actually truly mean what you mean and actually have a track record. But a lot of people are fucking pussies, and a lot of people are immature children at the end of the day. So what they're doing is they're faking a profile, they're faking a persona. So we're cancel culturing people that might show integrity at some stage and be like, I really am confused at what the fucking problem is with thuyghurs Uyghurs. Like, is there really a problem there? Can China really? I don't know. And maybe there's this humbleness to it, or maybe there's a naivety to it. But at the same time, you've got somebody over there saying, we need to stand up against, these certain rights and all that. And it's like, motherfucker, you're an Instagram star and you don't donate shit. And I know, Akon is over there giving away his fortune and not saying anything to anybody, just doing it. But yet, we want to back all these people who are public profiles, and you have to watch what they say.
Dan,
right?
I have a sneaking suspicion you might have an opinion against the mainstream here. I'm kind of curious what you think about cancel culture, specifically Rogan. I just want to hear from you. I have a suspicion you know what you want to say, so go off.
I do, but I don't think it might be that radical difference than other people. So I think that cancer culture is like tied into the fabric of America, right? It's been happening. Let's look at any basic American tenet of strikes and boycotts, right? The first cancer culture was Boston Tea Party itself, right? So what, in my opinion, perpetuates cancer culture is one of America's core freedoms, which is freedom of association, especially in the free market economy, right? So like, how do we move from it? I think it's difficult because political identity is not considered a protected class in the States, right? So if like someone is a Nazi, I don't have to hire them. There's no prohibition against it, maybe for a few states. But like, if we care about liberalism and we care about freedom, what we need to fear isn't like private companies and their terms of service, or private companies acquiescing to the social pressures of a free market with people who they don't want to lose their bottom line, right? This is tied into the fabric of America. What we need to fear is recurring images and recurring things that kind of symbolize the way McCarthyism worked. For me, that's like the height of cancel culture. If we start seeing government commissions and government bodies that create these lists that, you know, companies try to, then I think we need to start fearing it. But until then, all we're seeing in this current era is very similar to what you saw during the Bush era and the Clinton, which is just the mass of a majority kind of driving companies and private entities into acquiescing to their needs because of financial pressures. I think that's what people mean by cancel culture. So when you look at Joe Rogan example, it's Spotify being afraid of losing its bottom line. It's people scaring companies with boycotts. This is as American as it gets. I think cancel culture is more of a fear. It's more of a minority. And in the United States right now, because partisanship is so close together, right, was like 51% to 49%, people feel this canceling. But this will be felt by any minority group in any country where free markets and companies and profit-driven organizations are not going to acquiesce to their wants and their needs and going to demonize them. This is all it is. When I think about cancel culture, and I think an appropriate way to speak about it is more akin to McCarthyism, and I don't see that happening currently.
If I could follow
Okay,
that.
I have to vehemently disagree
Hold
with
on,
that.
Kapowski.
And
Yeah, go.
I just want to give one example I just want to give you one example that there was a man, I can't remember his name, who was a newscaster, a weatherman out of New York City, and he accidentally said a word when he was saying the word Martin Luther King Jr. He accidentally said Martin Luther Coon Jr. And it was clearly an accident. He wasn't trying to say that at all. Why would, there's no possible reason for one to say that. He just, as somebody that speaks, in front of the public a lot of time, eventually you're going to flub and make mistakes when you're on air. And he was fired almost immediately for that because a lot of activist groups came out and condemned those actions. He was immediately fired. And do you really think the public had a problem with this? Do you really think that if we took a vote of everybody, that everybody would agree that this man should be fired for what was obviously a mistake? No. So, I mean, there's a matrix.
I think you're not understanding me at all. I think you're not understanding me at all.
Can I interject? And Dan, I want to steel man your point, but I want to follow what you're saying is we have a situation where we have algorithms socially, right, that can groupthink people really quickly. It's becoming a national problem that we're recognizing. Facebook has already recognized it. Shit, they did a study on it. So it can group together. When you see really radical movements get pushed through a town, you actually see how many people signed it, and it's like, a couple 100,000 people. Back in the day, you had to door knock. Now you have change.org. You can gather that almost within a day or two. So having these changes, right, having people group together is one problem. And to your other point, so if you want to talk specifically on Joe Rogan and Spotify and somebody like Neil Young doesn't own his music. Neil Young is not allowed to go to Spotify, depending on the contract that he has, doesn't get to go to Spotify and say, take my music off, right? His music was actually bought by certain groups. Warner Brothers, most importantly, Merck, which is one of the pharmaceutical companies, one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies, actually owns most of his album. So there is a lot happening behind the scenes. I work in the political landscape. I risk advise companies. There are internal audits on how you are treating LGBTQ, Black minorities, Mexican minorities. There are internal audits on that, as well as who you are hiring, if they are diversified or not, to represent your company facing forward. That's a fucking problem. There's all these issues that are happening because of this, and all you're seeing is just a few 10,000 person mob outside your business chanting because you didn't hire enough Black people tomorrow. That could be done instantly, social media, overnight, very quickly. You didn't have that back in the day, right? You weren't able to group that many people who most likely were probably unemployed together really quickly to get somebody outside of a storefront doing this kind of stuff. So the question is it needed? Is it necessary? Is this true? Or people back then to gather 10,000 people to chant and say, we don't like this, would have taken months. And by then, most people would have realized that it was probably a dumb thing to do in the first place. That's the question.
regards to that, somebody before Dan said something about cancel culture not really being about what was happening to Rogan. It was something else. And I can't remember who it was. And I agree, because what I'm thinking is, when people say cancel culture, it's like, do I really give a damn about Joe Rogan? To me, real cancel culture is so subtle, most people don't even know about it. Like you've got like in the state of Texas, where Matt Krause, the Texas state rep, he came up with a whole list of books which he believes should be banned and not be placed in schools. And then you had a Texas school district that has chosen over 400 books which they removed and they won't let be taught in those schools or be read. So those authors won't be read, their books won't be read in those schools. That's like serious form of cancel culture. I mean, those books, some of them are by Black authors, some of them are by LGBTQ authors. Some of those books deal with the civil rights, they deal with slavery. And this Texas state rep has said, get rid of these books. And those books have been canceled from the educational system. So I don't know, I just think that's a lot more scarier than Joe Rogan being canceled.
So I would, I'm going to push back on that a little bit. I'd say that while both of those it may certainly be a problem, I think it's like a categorical difference in kind, because cancel culture is a broad-based cultural movement to ruin somebody's life because they said something unpopular. What you're describing is like an elected official representing his people in the public school and deciding what and what not to expose children to. It's not larger. So I think that I don't know which one is worse, because
exposing them to what, though? They've been educated on their history.
Well, see, it depends on the curriculum. You'd have to look on what's actually deleting history and what's deleting certain interpretations of history. I don't know. I'd have to look at them. But I think that they're bad for different reasons, because the school one, there's no getting out of. The school one is mandatory. The kids can't see it because the kids can't see it, and it's the government doing it, and that's really bad. But it's not blocking it off to all people. There's no social suicide if somebody who's not in school gets it, or if the parent of the kid gives it to the kid outside of school. That's fine. And it's kind of the inverse of cancel culture, is that it's a cancel culture as defined, as seen with like people like Rogan and other social figures, is a decentralized type of cultural enforcement. It's not as mandatory, it's not as authoritarian and as centralized as what you're describing, but it also is more inescapable, because what you just described is limited specifically to the schools giving things to those particular kids. Well, the problem of cancel culture follows you around nearly everywhere, on every platform, around most people who don't live underground. So again, I'm not going to say which one is worse. I'm just going to say that they're different and they're have issues for different reasons. I don't think you can group those together as the same thing per se.
Can I clarify what I think there has been a misunderstanding with what I said?
Please. I wasn't responding to you, but sure.
No, I know, but because it's like I just didn't want the point to move too far away from my statement.
Sure, man.
I'm not saying that cancel culture is a good thing, right? I actually, like, if you go back to, I don't know, I guess I might show my, maybe this is like a boomer talking point, but who guys remembers Michael Vick and his dog fighting thing?
Yeah, I remember that.
I remember I used to do football at the time.
What? It's a boomer talking point? Dude,
it's
that happened
joke, it's a joke. It's
that
a
happened
joke,
like 10 years ago, brother.
And people were like, oh, he can't. I was like, yeah, Michael Vick might be an asshole when it comes to, dog fighting. He's a fucking good quarterback. I think he should still play. Right, so what I'm saying is that cancel culture as a whole is something that has been a part of American culture for a long time. But cancel culture has been around since a long time in America, very, very long time. And I don't think this is something that is necessarily new. I think just as people are getting more divided, it is getting worse. Now,
so Dan, can I
don't. One second. I don't think.
Quickly. Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So it's been recognized actually ever since our founding that it's a problem, and part of one of the things that our country put together in Jeffersonian democracy was states that are locally represented, as opposed to having this giant one centralized massive authority that can dictate everything that you're allowed to say or read or do.
That's a lie.
And so cancel culture has been there, but it was local. It's always been local, and having these local experiments is a part of what makes us able to figure out what's right and wrong.
Yeah, but the place I want to take this next is when Kapowski said no one votes whether or not they should be taken out, right? It's up to the decision of the company, right? This is in direct opposition to classic American, private entities and private companies making decisions how they want without a vote. Yeah, I'm for it. I say, hell yeah, let's have people vote for whether a company can fucking fire someone for their political opinion. Fuck yeah, I believe that.
Would you generalize that to all things?
But we don't do that. But we don't do that. We only vote with our dollar when it comes to companies, and we vote with our voice when it comes to democracy.
Oh, hold on, that's not true.
Where are those tools being used? In addition, canceling, right? If you want to say, hey, we canceled Native Americans, we canceled witches in fucking Salem.
It's not I brought up McCarthyism, right? I brought up McCarthyism.
True, but the point is are we using the tool correctly? Where are we using this tool of canceling correctly, and where are we not using this tool of it? And I think on a national level, what Dilo's saying is, I think we're just now trying to explore that. And in fact, I think we're trying to explore it, canceling on a global scale and seeing kind of what that's like, because we're not just beheading people.
Yeah, but look at this. Look at it this way. Like Doodle said, back before the world was internationalized, before the country was things that were happening in Seattle were just as prevalent as things that were happening in New York to people in Alabama. If you worked at the Coke factory and you were, a KKK member, people didn't give a shit. Coke didn't get canceled. No one knew about it. You kept working at the factory. Today, if you're sitting at the factory and you say some absolute racist, psychotic shit, the whole country hears about it. You know what's going to end up happening? New York, LA, they got the most dollars. They spend the most dollars.
Only if you're a public figure.
Yeah, if I just record someone in a Coke factory saying Zid Heil and talking about how he supports Red Dragon, and I publish that on social media, you better be sure Coca-Cola is going to try to cancel him. This isn't a good thing. This is literally the ever expansion of and the results of an entirely free market with privatized entities who care about their bottom dollar and want to make sure that they're still selling and don't get boycotted in New York. This is what's causing this.
It's linked to the free market for sure.
Yeah, well, Dan, I agree, but there's a difference between legal and ethical, right? And also a big problem with this, and I know you agree with that, and a big problem with this cancel culture, depending on what side you look at it from, but the traditional usage of the term, is that not only are they attempting to cancel someone or dox them or whatever, it's the manipulation and lies about that person and clip harvesting and taking them in the worst possible context you could possibly take them in, instead of giving them a modicum of generosity. I mean, I was watching The View, and Joy Behar said something like, Joe Rogan, she said, he's a complete horror. I don't think he can be rehabilitated. And a lot of the times when these people get quote unquote canceled, they'll issue this weird Maoist struggle session video of I have learned so much in the past couple weeks and have grown as a person. It's re-education shit. From straight from the Soviet Union.
Have you ever associated or been a part of the Communist Party? You say no, they found out you had a friend who was actually a friend of a communist, and boom, you're blacklisted, right? This is what we're seeing on a much larger scale. But obviously I don't think this is a good thing, right? I really don't. I don't think it's okay internationally to take someone and take away their livelihood and their job and paint them in a corner. This doesn't make any sense. I don't agree with it. Now,
Zemo said they. Zemo said they. So who the fuck are they, right? If a lot of people here aren't agreeing with it, and majority of are they just influencers that are just ignorant, and why the fuck do they have
it's not just it's when you're a company, right? Because most of this is company related, right? Because we all would agree. I think that we all would agree that socially we have the right to associate with whoever we want. Right? We all agree with this, right? Everyone agrees with this?
Yes.
Right, but all of a sudden now we're saying, it seems like companies are kind of they're abusing this right to the point where it's harming people's livelihood. It's harming their ability to take care of themselves.
They're asking for your Facebook page on your resume, which seems kind of inappropriate, right?
Right. This is all fair within private contract laws, within freedom of association. This is a failure of a system when it gets too large, when it only worked in small individual areas. This is what we're seeing. Cancel culture has been around for the last 120 years. It's just simply getting bad because of the scope and the scale and the fact that it's affecting more people because companies are no longer beholden to areas, they're beholden to the entire country, even internationally.
Right.
That's my take on cancel culture.
And I agree. And I think that's an interesting point about the locality, because it's okay to have these strict cultural norms that you hold people to when you're local. But when you scale it, the higher up you scale, the more different people get. And having a singular dogma that rules so many people just simply doesn't work. While it might work in like isolated communities, it's kind of the same idea of federalism. It's like we're exercising too much power on too abstract of a level. That much power should be reserved for a more local level. So I really like that point. Someone else is going to talk about so please.
In regards to, I just wanted to quickly say, in regards, because earlier I mentioned the cancel culture of the 40s. I mean, back then people would actually get imprisoned if they didn't if they didn't give names of certain people that the House of Un-American Activities thought were communists or socialists.
Yeah, that was definitely worse. I would agree with you. It was worse back then.
And one thing I wanted to ask in regards to this: is there ever a time, in any of your opinion, where someone deserved to be cancelled?
In my opinion, yeah, tons of times.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's used correctly, but to your point, Dan, when it comes to the political landscape, we have an issue where companies are not socially responsible, and so now we're having to share the light and having to show these companies, hey, you have to socially be responsible. You can't just be a company out there and just do whatever the fuck you want in the dark, right? And then produce a good product. People want to see your company as a whole, okay?
Based socialism, let's do it.
Right. Well, no, it's not so much based socialism. It's like, listen, we're not gonna expect the government to clean up your fucking mess. Okay, and we don't want to have our taxpayer dollars clean up your fucking mess. So when you're over there and you're just hiring white people, right, and you're tearing up the land, okay, and you're giving minimum wage, right, what suffers? That whole fucking economy around you. Wherever your factory is, wherever your operation is, whatever you're doing, that whole system around you is failing. And so we're pushing for regulation, we push for regulation, and now we want to push for the removal of anonymity. And we really are doing this. I mean, on the sweeping amount of legislation that I've seen just in business practices, it has been the removal of anonymity as a whole. Just look at the special purpose acquisitions companies, these SPACs that are popping up. They remove anonymity, SPACs pretty much die overnight. So the point is that people want transparency. People want to know, is Coca-Cola a racist company, right? Are they still being ran by racists? Because I'm not gonna buy Coca-Cola. But once again, I think there's two fundamental things that we need to educate the people on, which is you vote with your dollar and you vote with your voice. The dollar is for the business and your voice is for democracy. Democracy will change the landscape on where your dollars could go. And so I think it's if you proverbially follow that, that's fine. But when you have, let's say you have an outspoken racist basketball team's owner, people are still going to go to the game because they believe in the basketball team, knowing that there's a fucking racist behind it. So people still put their dollars in those. So people still put their dollars in that direction.
And we already have that for the NFL.
And let me give you an example. Real quick, and I'll shut the fuck up. Netflix came out with a show called Cuties. All right?
Basketball teams, racist.
Which was about young girls, right, and exploring their sexuality at like age 13. In France, you're allowed to have sex at 16. And so they exploring their sexuality by all these interesting sexual moves and turning on older gentlemen well over 18 in their 20s and 30s and 40s. And it's the sexual appealing. Me and my wife canceled Netflix that day. They actually took a fat stock tip down because of the show Cuties. They did not remove Cuties. They still kept it on there, and they have just now starting to come back on that turn to come back into those profits. I think it took them like 6 months or a year to go into it. Firms are going to start looking at this and saying, we can take that kind of hit. We know how much blowout, given the data and analytics, that is absolutely worth to do this, losing those dollars to do it. And they're already doing it. You're seeing liabilities cost billions of dollars, but they know that they made $10 billion. The liabilities will be like $4 billion you're going to have to pay out, even maybe a few deaths or whatever. It doesn't really fucking matter. You're $6 billion richer at the end, so go ahead and do it. So I think this is what I'm trying to say is the pinnacle of all I'm trying to say is cancel culture is a way where the dollar is not working and people want to verbally say some shit and have people have their opinion almost as a mob mentality. It is never healthy as a mob mentality, but yet it is also necessary. The outcome needs to change. Not the initial, hey, this guy's saying some shit, because that really needs to be said, honestly, I think at the end of the day.
No response.
Yeah, I'll jump in here. To piggyback off of both y'all's points, and with Dan talking about economics and free association, I completely agree. A lot of it does have to do with, businesses and people putting pressure on businesses and them watching their bottom line, of course, right? But let's take the Joe Rogan example, for instance. Neil Young could have, this was purely ideological in my eyes, because Neil Young, I think Grimm brought something up about he doesn't own his music, but let's say he did, or he's still getting paid for it being on Spotify. He could have disagreed with Joe and just said nothing, and he could have gotten money, and Joe could have gotten money, and Spotify could have gotten money, and everything is good. But he chose to take a principled stance, depending on how you look at it. So yeah, in a lot of cases, I don't think this does boil down to economics. I think it boils down to ideology. And there are definitely, it does bleed over into economics, right? And companies protecting their ass, but yeah.
But imagine it this way. Imagine that Joe Rogan had an openly communist guest who was agreeing with, and then people, different artists, countries were like, we're not going to work with Spotify if they're going to let this communist, this Putinist, this Maoist have a platform on their thing. We're not going to do it, right? Obviously, ideology plays a role, but what enables this ideology and this result from this ideology is free association. It's the fact that Spotify has the right to do whatever they fucking want. Because they what do they fear? If you're getting outed,
but Dan, aren't the people attacking Spotify's ability to free associate by attacking them for having Joe Rogan on the platform?
Well, they're not telling Spotify that they won't. They're not telling Spotify you have to do this. They're saying we're not going to be a part of Spotify. We're going to cancel our subscription. I know people who did. I'm going to cancel my subscription with Spotify. Spotify will be like, oh, we're not willing to take this risk, right? Grimm said that Netflix took the hit and they got over, and people are learning they can take the hit. Maybe that is true. Maybe that will go away. But right now, as it seems, what enables this, whether we like it or don't like it, is the ability of private companies to freely associate with things that are not considered protected classes, like political. You can't, as a company, choose to freely associate with someone because of their race. You can't do that. You can't be like, I don't want to associate them because he's black. You're not, that's illegal. But it's not illegal to say I don't want to associate with someone because of their political ideology. That's currently legal in the States.
Sure. I don't.
Fine. Why?
And I don't think anybody disagrees with that.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's.
We're all aware of what the laws are.
Didn't Jordan Peterson say, "Let the irrational speak," so that we all know that they're irrational? And so, if you want to go join a white supremacist group, speak about it, talk about it. Sure, do what you want to do. This is what it is, And we see history go the wrong way all the fucking time. Is there truly anything you can do to stop it?
Everything's predetermined. And we don't have free will, so.
The whole country decided that white supremacy. The whole country decided tomorrow that Mexicans are the most superior race and they need to take over everywhere, and everyone backs that because they've just been treated so poorly that everyone's like, you know what, you could just have the fucking country, okay? You would all
Okay,
or back it.
Hold
but
on.
You
What are
wouldn't
you
be able
talking
to
about?
control it, but you wouldn't be able to control history at that point.
So I would actually say that publications, specific, really far-reaching publications, I would say that they do need to be beholden to the stakeholders. I think that we can definitely have laws in the books about the responsibilities of specific publications, like the fairness doctrine that was taken away by Reagan, or the idea that you're not allowed to advertise to kids. Like, I'm okay with laws like that. I don't have an issue with them, with those laws whatsoever.
I think Dan, to that point, I think we ought to have some additions to a Bill of Human Rights, like some constitutional amendments that guarantee certain individual rights when we're talking about the context of how you're interacting across the internet. One of the things I brought up about a year ago when I started coming on this was that's something it's gonna become more and more of a problem as people lose their ability to pay attention to what they want to pay attention to, and these big companies sell the rights to your attention to people who can get it through the knowledge that they've gained by secretly collecting data from you with all these AI algorithms that know exactly when you're taking a shit, and all they have to do is flash the screen, buzz your phone right now, and they can get you to do whatever the fuck they want.
I do think,
and then all the sources of information. If you had an internet bill of rights, and you have the right, let's just say the two rights that I think that are critical are the right to own your own attention for one, and then the right to own your own metadata for another. So a company can't go and lambast you as being a Nazi without due process. Right? So if you get a Wikipedia article about you that says, "Oh, you're a Nazi," and then you can't get it taken down, even though it's libelous, and there was no due process involved. That's a human right that we have in our interpersonal relationships that we don't have on the internet. And now that almost everything is on the internet, we absolutely need that shit.
You already have those rights.
Yeah, there are huge problems with libel and slander laws. It's become very difficult to prove anything, or not prove it, but get them to rule.
And making videos out of context where it reverses the meaning of what you were saying. So Joe Rogan says, you really shouldn't call someone a nigger, and he says that 45 times, and then they make a video clip of him saying nigger, 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 nigger. That's not really very fair to Joe Rogan, and it's libel, and guess what? Getting canceled for that's fucking beyond the pale, in my opinion.
Yeah, I do think that this digital age does kind of change the land, and this might just dovetail with Dan's point about cancel culture being bad when it gets scaled up too high, because the internet and our technological platforms are basically the ultimate scale. They're the highest abstract level of communication between as many people as possible. So that might be kind of the same.
Tell that to fucking the Facebook guy. He's creating the metaverse, brother. Get with the year 2022, bro.
It's not here yet, so I don't have to worry about it. That's the future doesn't exist. It's an illusion. Let's not worry about it. Anyway,
true.
I think it might be the same idea. That's kind of what I'm saying, and I think it does change when you have the internet, where you can edit statements and you can spread information so easily. I think it's the scale problem Dan was talking about.
I think one of the first things that's be reinstantiated is the fairness doctrine. Which is literally lawmakers in 1949 afraid that NBC, ABC, and CBS would misuse their broadcasting and set biased public agenda through their platforms, right? Let's start with what we've already taken away. These things were here to begin with.
Right, but who defines...
We are where we are because of a result of deregulation.
Right, but who defines fair then? Because then instead of having a variety of sources that are all fucked up and unfair in different ways, then you just have one source called the government who decides what happens to be fair and controllable.
You can no, it'll always be the people that decide value, right? So we decide value on everything around us, including what we call fair morals, right? Things like that all strive from value. Yeah, so this is called will. Even in economics, right? Like if you go to economics, right, and you go 101, go what's the price of that widget? You don't know until a customer approaches. That's when you find out what the price of the widget is.
This
Yeah,
might
and
be
another
like
thing
a
for
very
economics,
simple
like-
question I wanted to ask, but
Sure.
we've been talking about cancel culture and we've been talking about Joe Rogan. Maybe things have changed, so please correct me if I'm wrong. Joe Rogan still has his job and he's still on his $1 million+ contract. So when we say So when we say he's being cancelled, what are people stoning his house, or is he being kicked on the street? I don't
Well,
understand.
nobody's
I
saying
couldn't
he's
agree
been canceled. We're talking about the culture surrounding
The attempt.
things that normally that do
Certainly
lead
been an
to
attempt.
people being canceled, right?
I'd say many parts of what he wanted to say in his podcast have been canceled. They were removed through social coercion pressure.
Yeah, I mean, he lost 150 episodes. So there's another point about
different.
There is debate to whether or not he decided to do that.
If you believe in his integrity, then he would individually take it upon his own value, right, to do these things. Like Dr. Seuss was rewriting books that he found insensitive that he wrote like 30 years ago that he realized that he needed to rewrite. And so his family has been doing that, but then people are like, oh, Dr. Seuss, we're ready to read Dr. Seuss. Like, this guy's been doing it. He has been doing it. Why is now everybody getting upset about this?
I think we can all agree that the government needs to have its hand in the actions of private businesses a little more.
I disagree strongly.
Open the can of worms.
Disagree strongly.
I don't think we can all agree on that.
I think we just all did, didn't we?
Yeah.
No.
I think
to a certain extent.
Business.
That's not very war of ideas of you, Dan.
To a certain extent.
So what about personal markets? Like there's something that's incredibly important about all this big tech censorship that we call cancel culture or the mass popularization of censorship, where like we essentially we don't have an impersonal market anymore, right? So this whole thing with you get forced into a bubble and you're getting shown all the negative things that they need to control you. It's because people are collecting data about you that's personal, and they're discovering your preferences that maybe even you don't know that you have. And in many cases against your will, and that's how they can manipulate you into going along with canceling someone for something like free speech. Doing some ridiculous. Someone says something stupid. But I mean,
who has the power to cancel?
Just as important of a aspect of this.
Who has the power to cancel, though, right?
Technically, only the person being canceled does. Only if you admit you're wrong. Really, can it really be done to you?
Yeah.
No, you can get fired from your job, and then people refuse to rehire you.
Yeah, like Whoopi got fired for saying something about the Holocaust or something.
Social pressures. You could still keep your job, but deal with the social pressures of like family, friends, random strangers. You could have political ties.
Yeah, I mean, but if we
have personal goals that are now, you could have personal goals that are now destroyed because people specifically just don't want to deal with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
But this is as
you can't cancel someone.
This is as true. The term "saving face" literally comes from this social dilemma. That when you're in public, your face, what you are perceived as to other people is an important commodity. It's such an important commodity that if we can look back at books like the Bible, where it is shaming someone in public is considered akin to murder. So,
in litigation, it could be personal. It's going to be hard for somebody to say, this person did do business with me. Well, their business can do business with whomever, and that's fine. But once again, I think most people are like, well, that's not okay. I think that if people are harassing you, there's laws in place. If a company doesn't want to hire you, then that's discrimination. If a person doesn't want to do business with you, they don't get your dollar, so they lose a client and maybe more if they happen to be on the wrong side of the fence at the end of the day. I think the repercussions are there, but people don't discuss, and people are trying to cancel people. That may work great for a while, but then eventually this person could end up on top. Eventually this person could get a book deal. Eventually this person can get fame and money and actually, go through some pain now, but actually get some pleasure of being right at the end. I think Joe Rogan could get 1,000 more likes on his videos because of this shit. Just like where Howard Stern's claim to fame was offending people on a day-to-day basis, right? So it can go either way when it comes to how somebody is gonna come out of this. It's not negative every time. I think that their landscape unfortunately has to change, but like you said, the future is an illusion, right? So the landscape is gonna change anyway.
Hey Dan, what's your opinion on the faction within people who they do cancel culture like they go looking to be offended? People who dig up private conversations and then are offended when they find this thing.
Fuck them. Those are people who are looking. If you dig up my private conversations, I would be canceled a long time ago. Ridiculous shit.
We all would, dude.
What did you say? What did you say, Dan?
I'm not trying to get canceled. What do you mean?
No. It's like
I'm a very edgy. I am a very edgy person. If anyone's been with me privately in the Discord, they know I'm an edgy person.
It's not like
when
we're
I'm
live
just,
or
like, with my brothers, I will say some really edgy shit as a joke because it's funny. Sometimes I think it's funny to pretend to be racist with my close friends. Like, if anyone just clipped that out of context, I'm fucked.
It's hilarious.
So this is what I want to ask. So when somebody makes an edgy joke, let's say on YouTube, and they send it to their friends, and then the Nazi pug example.
Nazi pug.
YouTube is a social sharing platform and not a text.
Yeah, but you have 13 followers, literally 13 followers. You put up a video specifically so you can share it with your friends, and then
doesn't matter.
That's what I'm saying. So, sure, Count Dankula made an entire career out of it, but people went looking for him, and they're like, "This guy has made a dog do a Nazi salute. Destroy this man's life."
Oh, God, that's stupid.
He probably got a billion likes after that. Probably got a few brand new car.
But what about those who don't? Right? What about the worker who doesn't? What about the people who simply share a video on TikTok and they get annihilated for it? And now they're out of a job and their kid gets bullied at school because of it.
Because of what? I mean, actually look at the losses and the liabilities occurred. And if your job does that, there could be some litigation back towards that. So once again, I think if you actually take case by case, you're going to see this just amalgamy, this plethora of different situations where some people actually ended up much better in life because of this shit, and some people ended up worse in life because of this shit. And you're going to be well, fuck, which one is the right? And you're going to go all the way back to the front and say, it's just freedom of speech. Somebody had to say something. I mean, somebody had to say something. And if the person was wrong, at least it was said. And we never really want to knock on anybody for not saying anything. There's no stupid questions.
But
there's just
the problem is not when you republish it.
I want to say
something
after
you twist something and then republish it, right? So if you twist something and take it out of context and dredge up something that somebody or dredge up something that somebody said off record, and maybe it was like Dan's. Pretending to be racist, tongue-in-cheek jokes with his friends. If you dredge that up and take it out of context and republish it, it's not the original speaker that should be liable for the damage caused by that. It's the republisher, right?
And that's what I would say.
And these laws that give ultimate protection to the republishers in this case are just incredibly backwards. Yeah, like Section 230.
What laws? No, I mean but what if I want to make an internet right about Dan, right, or about you going off in the N-word like a bunch of times, right, and I mix that up or whatever, I go to dox you with that, right, and there should be no repercussion on me other than the fact that maybe I'm the one that actually should be canceled, right?
Well,
and
you stole his image.
We should grow as a culture and go, no, this asshole
you stole
took a
his
bunch
image.
Of this asshole just took him out of context. Well, his image is right to use. I don't give a fuck. But this asshole took his context.
Right. So what I'm saying,
things
the
are out of
Internet Bill of
context,
Rights,
it's not
we
out of
need an
context.
Internet Bill of Rights
No,
that your metadata is yours to own. You can't steal somebody's image.
You already own it. You
can't steal somebody's image and fucking republish it with different meanings and then damage another person. That needs to be illegal.
It should be obvious that somebody cutting that up in the first place doesn't make sense. It's education. It has nothing to do with rights. It has everything to do with education. People looking at a cut up video out of context and just going, Yeah, why would I consider that to be? Why would I put that any grain of salt there, right? Other than Joe Rogan
People can't tell the
saying
difference.
that, right? Other than Joe Rogan saying that, but then there's this clip where he
People
goes,
can't
but
tell
then
the
I
difference.
actually did say some stuff, right? In like this kind of racist mentality. I'm not racist, but what I said, I can see the kind of being offensive. I don't really mean to come across that way. That's not who I see myself being. So I'm not okay with that thing. So that's appropriate response. That's fine. But anybody that looks past that and says, see, he says the N-word all the time, right? Gonna look like a fucking idiot showing that video to their friends. If any common smart friend just goes, yeah, that's a cut up video out of context. I don't give a fuck.
People
But
can't
it
tell
was
the
a bit
difference.
more. It was a bit more complicated. There was one video where he talked about walking into an environment, and he says, "Dude, it was like Land of the Apes or something," you know. And
Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, and
That's the comment I'm talking about.
Yeah, and I watched the rest because I heard Joey Behar say that, so I said, "Oh, really?" So I went and watched the video, and like 5 seconds after he said that, he said, "Oh, I shouldn't have said that. That was racist." And if you watch the whole video, it is literally the exact opposite of what they portrayed it as. Because he was talking about going to an all-black neighborhood, and he saw Planet of the Apes in an all-black neighborhood. And he said he was sitting there watching the trailers, and that, you know, he was like, oh, and I was stoned, and all the people were white, and it was weird. And then there was this one scene where Jonah Hill was playing this cool guy, and the way he knew he was a cool guy was he went up to get in the club and talked to this black bouncer like, "Hey, yo, what's up, home slice?" You know, all this bullshit. And that's how you knew he was the cool guy. And Joe was like, and this is crazy because now I'm seeing it in this context, and this is what it is for black people all the time, to always see white people in movies. So I watched that video, and it was he was literally making a point on behalf of black people, and like 5 seconds after he said that, he said, "Oh, that was racist. I didn't mean it like that. I didn't say it." But he was just like, it was a wild neighborhood, like. He was like, we went up in there, people were having fun. And he was like, you know how it's a cliche that black people talk at the movies? He's like, it's fucking true. But they were having fucking fun in there. They were going ham, you know, that type of thing. So, yeah, again, it was the complete opposite if you watch it in full context, right?
I mean, I think people are
Right, so
saying
who's liable for those damages?
that context does matter, right? And context is generally what's lost by the cancel culture mob. And the cancel culture mob is a tyranny of the minority. It's a group that has buying power, and it's a group that becomes a mob. They get bought into an idea because they don't have any context. And because they take ideas out of context, because they are driven by the idea that they don't need any context. And it's basically people that are ignorant of a situation, and it becomes a mob of people that are a minority with buying power. So whichever mob has the most buying power is what these institutions, these companies are going to cave to and cater to. And it's, generally speaking, not a good thing.
It's not just that how did the mob form? The mob was absolutely facilitated by these big tech companies that are taking all this personal data they have and their AI algorithms, tell them how do I get these people to start reacting to this content. And the stuff that's gonna make them react is what they're shown, and guess what? It makes them react.
That's all true, and the algorithms are pretty bad because it has taken advantage of every single person in this room, unfortunately. But on a bigger scale, what's up with the psychology, right? With the fact that a person is extremely smart, but people are fucking stupid. As soon as you get a mob mentality, it takes one radical to shift the narrative, right? Or just a few radicals to shift the narrative. And that is a huge, massive fucking issue, right? Nobody wants to storm the Capitol until a bunch of fucking people start storming the goddamn Capitol. You know, I guess we're storming the Capitol, I don't know. And if you were there, you might have even kind of stepped past that line a little bit just because you're like, I guess this is where we're going, like what's going on, right? And so why does it always take just a few crazy radicals to shift the narrative and paint this whole picture in such a bad light? Like, look at Black Lives Matter. Everybody fucking hated the fact that they were just destroying things, but yet they're like, oh, but I still stand with them on these things. But yeah, they're kind of terrorists in some way. That's a hard thing. When are we going to solve that? When are we going to get past that? What does it take to even get past that?
I think
things like cancel culture in the first place.
So I think the solve and the defining trait of cancel culture is basically an utter lack of empathy. That's like a lack of mercy and a lack of forgiveness. That's what I see being consistent because, like Dan said, and like a lot of people made the point, there's a difference between voting with your dollar for values you don't like and then like ripping people's throats out. Like that's how I kind of see it. Is that the difference between like just general cultural norms and like basic social standards of decency, and cancel culture is the fact that for cancel culture there is no absolution, there is no forgiveness, there is no mercy most of the time, unless you completely like transition or something. Transition to their ideology, I mean. So I think that might be a good way.
And in the 40s, it would be, I'm so sorry that I was a communist, you know. I see the errors of my way.
I have read F.A. Hayek. It is not my Bible, you know.
Wait a minute. How the hell did Jane Fonda survive without being canceled? Because she was against America during the
She's
Vietnam
fucking
War.
hot, that's why. 'Cause she's fucking hot.
And she took pictures with the NBA, didn't she?
That
when she
always
was in
helps.
Vietnam?
Yeah.
So,
It's because she was hot.
So Japanese actually have this practice, right, which is about keeping care of your own. So if you fell over sick in the street, they'd pretty much walk over you. We call this indifference. They have their own words for it. We typically say the Japanese are indifferent, so they don't give a fuck about you unless you are a celebrity, right, or unless you are a part of a family, right, and then that family would care about you.
Yeah,
So
that's
it
true.
has to do with like your last name. That's about it. That's all it gives a fuck. If we're in a system that practice indifference, right, and we have people that are constantly immigrating that they also practice massive indifferences. We have something here in America that is, we weren't practicing indifference and we were being more empathetic towards Americans as compared to the rest of the world. And is it saturating into us where we're starting to practice more indifference and we're seeing these issues?
Guys.
I want to. Oh, you almost done?
Yeah, but you can
gotta
finish.
cut
And
it off.
then no, you can go, and then we'll go around the room.
In Japan, they also won't take your bag if you leave it on the train. Like, you'll still be there the next day when you get back on the train to go to work.
They don't give
they have a totally different culture.
Incredibly low crime in Japan, yeah.
All right, Zima, what were you
They
going to say?
don't care about you in so many different ways. They don't want
Then
your
you
stuff.
have to create a government that when you fall over sick and no one else is there to take care of you, you have to create a system upon which to take care of you. Right? So,
all right, Zimo's turn.
Healthcare, police are going to stop by, people are going to pick you up, things like that. Should we be practicing indifference if it creates a safer world around us and it allows us to practice our freedoms a little bit easier too?
If I may, I
think
make
you're
one,
right.
one more quick point, real quick. I just think the one main effect of quote unquote cancel culture, and I think people perceive it as, at least the version we're talking about, predominantly coming from the left, is it's artificially shifting people into the box of right wing, right? It's like, we have this ugly suit for you to wear. Why don't you try it on, right? And it's like, I don't want to wear your suit. I'm not a right winger. You know what I mean? I mean, if we go back 5-6 years and look at Joe Rogan's beliefs, or even now, I don't think anybody would consider him, a dyed-in-the-wool conservative or Republican or misinformation distributor or anything like this. But the perception is from people that don't know, like my mom or my aunt, oh yeah, isn't Joe Rogan like some alt-right, crazy conservative? And this happens with a lot of people, right? And a lot of people end up embracing it and going on Fox News and just, not giving a shit about morals and stuff like that. But yeah, it's artificially shifting people into the right-wing category, which in the end hurts the very cause that the people who are fighting him are fighting for, right? So yeah, I think we should pay attention to that consequence. I don't think it's shifting the Overton window, right? Or at least in the eyes of some people, right? So that's all I got to say.
All right, I want to go around the room and get some final thoughts, and then we're gonna get out. Snark, there's some new people here, Snark, Brelic, and Bruce. So that's kind of unfortunate you guys haven't been here the whole time, but you should still get to drop final thoughts, burning questions. So we're gonna start with Lebowski. Just give me your 30-second final thoughts, if you have any, and if you don't, just pass it on. What do you want to finish with?
Did you call on me?
No, Lebowski.
Oh, sorry.
But it does not seem that he is around. So, Bombay, your turn, mate.
Thank you. On cancel culture.
Yeah, just
It
have
is
anything you want to
complicated.
finish with. Yeah, any final thoughts, real quick?
Any final thoughts? I think it does good things, and if used badly, it will do bad things. And that's all I have to say. It's very complicated. I don't have any answers for it. Sorry.
All right, no worries, man. I appreciate your time, Brelic. I know you're kind of coming in cold turkey, but I believe in you. We're talking about council culture. I would like your 30-second take on whether it's good or bad and why. Brelic going once, twice, sold. Not to you. Okay, Bruce.
So just specifically on cancel culture?
Yeah, just what do you think? Quick takes.
I mean, I think it could be a useful utility in a market-based system. So, like, on principle, canceling people for, what you believe or what a group of people collectively believe, I don't see as inherently bad. But I could see it being, weaponized politically. But I mean, it's manifested poorly in some cases, but I'm okay with people weaponizing their collective ideas. So I got no problem with that.
All right, Doolittle.
I think I said it before a couple different ways. I think censorship is inevitable, and it's better if it's done in a distributed manner and as close to the individual who's the observer as possible. I think we need to own our own attentions and get power over that away from these large centralized organizations, whether it's government or big tech. And so if you're getting canceled, it's by the people around you who don't want to hear from you, not by some random people that are very far away. So that's my thoughts.
All right, Dan with the flip side take, I imagine.
I think cancel culture is all right. I think people have a right to say choose with their dollar, complain, pressure companies. But I don't think that companies or a board of electors has the right to simply fire people or kind of ruin their lives and their livelihoods simply because of the opinion of people outside of the company. And this is why I believe in workplace democracy. I think that the company should vote to decide whether that person should be there or not, depending on their opinions, and it shouldn't be up to the tyranny of a board. But overall, people should have the right to freely associate and complain if they don't like shit the people who sell them products do.
Thank you. Kapowski?
Yeah, I would say that cancel culture is mob justice. Sometimes the consequences of that in the short term are good, sometimes they are bad. But overall, the concept of mob justice is horrible and it's anti the ideal of democracy. And the forces behind cancel culture are oftentimes activist groups or demagogues and other types of ideologues that have agendas. They manipulate an ignorant public into jumping on board with ideas that they do not understand. And that results in cancellation. That results in those groups using their buying power to wreak havoc on the lives of individuals and to get media attention that they don't deserve. And it is overall negative for society.
All right, thanks. Snark, how about you, man? Going once, going twice. That's strike three. Let's mix some metaphors. Okay, Symmetry.
Yeah, man. I don't have anything specific on cancel culture because I don't have too much of an opinion, but I really enjoyed and agreed with a lot of opinions that were presented here, and it's a lot of well-researched information. I liked it. Good stuff.
All right, great. Thank you. Thank you for sticking around, man. Appreciate it. Want to see you again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Zemo.
Yeah.
I guess you get to bat cleanup here.
or batting ninth, depending on how you look at it. Cleanup's fourth.
Yeah, whatever.
Well, anyways, I won't pick on you too hard for that, but
You really are nice.
yeah, I mean,
God,
yeah, I mean,
get
I don't
it.
think I've
I'm
said.
stupid. It's okay.
I mean, I think generally, I'm not a fan of cancel culture. I think the legality of free association and should people be allowed to, get together to, try and coerce a company to, or silence or do something that they want them to do. We could talk about the legality, but I think it goes against. People talk about the letter of the law and the letter of the law and the spirit of the law, and I think it's against the spirit of freedom of speech. And one other thing I've mentioned earlier is I'm increasingly more skeptical of this term misinformation. I do acknowledge that there is misinformation out there, but I see it as a ever-shifting goalpost that can be weaponized. Real quick, for example, there's a few things that 2 years ago you could have said, like, I think this came from a lab, the COVID, or,
Vitamin D could help.
Right, and that are now totally reasonable, looked at as totally reasonable, and they would have been labeled misinformation back then. So yeah, I think the whole cancel culture phenomenon is it's based in ignorance and authoritarianism in its worst forms, and naivety and idealism in its lesser forms.
All right, thank you. I usually say something at the end of these, but honestly, you guys have pretty much exhausted it, so I'm not going to prattle on. For anybody watching on YouTube or whoever sees this, please join the Discord. There should be a link in the description. Like, share, subscribe, because free and fair discourse like this on controversial topics is rare, mostly because of the concept we're talking about right now, ironically enough. So please support the channel if you're interested. Join the Discord. Join these conversations. And thank you all for watching, and thank you all for being here and participating. Very much appreciate it. That's all for me.
Thanks, John. You're the best.
Peace. It's been said. It's been said.
And use the Brave browser.
All right.